Good afternoon, everybody. It's Monday, November 29th. I hope everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend, and we're back at it today. And what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Omicron. We've got a new COVID variant that hit the scene in a big way on Friday. Friday after Thanksgiving tends to be sort of a weird trading day. It's a half day of trading. A lot of the big market participants just aren't working that day. So what you generally see is not too much. Friday was a little bit different. I think we saw an overreaction to the downside based on the news that they discovered identified, I should say, a new variant of COVID in South Africa, the Omicron variant. And here's the good news. So the woman that found this thing in South Africa, and I should say this, if it seems like some of these new variants are coming out of South Africa, it's really because actually South Africa, they've got some of the best scientists dealing with viruses in the entire planet do research down there. I mean, they're doing HIV research, they're doing a lot of other disease research down there, and I just think they're the ones that are finding it. It's probably in a lot of other places already. They happen to be finding it in South Africa. But the woman that found this one, or identified this, I should say, her name is Angelique Coetzee, and here's the great news. Here's what she is saying. She is saying that this seems to have extremely mild symptoms. They don't notice any noticeable uptick in deaths or hospitalizations. So that is a really, really good thing. I've got some opinions on Omicron, what it could mean for the future in terms of financial markets and the economy. And I would just say this, take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I'm not a public health expert. I'm certainly not a doctor. I'm not a virologist. I'm just one guy with a cell phone and an opinion. But I'll give you a few of those opinions. First of all, I think the market was down on Friday, not so much because we have a new COVID variant. I think we understand at this point that COVID will now be with us in some capacity until the end of time. It is not going anywhere. The good news is it tends to be doing what viruses do, where they mutate downward. They get a lot more transmissible, but they get a lot less deadly. We saw that with Delta, way more transmissible, less deadly. At least the early preliminary research on this thing, of course it's way soon, but it's showing sort of the same thing. So COVID's not going anywhere. So instead of shutting everything down, locking everything down, looking for the zero COVID policy, I think we need to transition into living with this thing and making appropriate adjustments as new variants come out, or hopefully they get weak enough where we don't need to make any adjustments at all. And in terms of the impact of the financial markets on Friday, I think the reason the markets took such a thumping, again, is not because of a new variant. It's because of fear of what governments around the world may do in the wake of this news. We've talked about supply chain, we've talked about inflation, we've talked about the Fed, the federal government, and central banks around the world blowing cash at this COVID problem, which is why we're seeing a lot of issues that we're seeing right now. And I think what we saw on Friday, where the market's saying, please don't do anything, don't shut down the economy, don't stress the supply chains even more. And again, at the risk, I don't want to offend anybody. I know this is a touchy topic. People have had COVID. People have had loved ones that have had COVID. People have lost loved ones to COVID. So I'm certainly not diminishing the seriousness of this virus and its impact on us. But I do think it's time to make a transition here. And the transition should be from listening purely to public health officials, because their lens, the lens that they view this thing through, will always be a zero COVID lens. It will always be eradicating this virus completely from the face of the planet. I think everyone realizes that's just not going to happen right now. So I think as we look at our responses to this variant, new variants that will come undoubtedly in the future, I think we of course need to listen to our public health experts, but I also think we need to listen to our economic experts. I think we need to listen to our mental health experts. I think we need to listen to our military experts. I think we need to listen to a lot more voices about what the impacts of different policy decisions may be on the economy as a whole, on the people of not just the United States, but also the world. We need more voices. We just cannot be listening to public health because they can only see it through one lens. And this is something that's it's a lot bigger than this right now. In terms of the economy, I'm just coming from the side that I think more shutdowns and lockdowns would be a big mistake. I think it would harm the economy. And the argument that the economy can be harmed for the health and safety of the people, I completely understand that. But I also think that the reason that we could come out with these vaccines as quickly as we did, the reason the therapeutics now are out there, the reason that things continue to hum along and products were delivered to your door is because you cannot stop this economy. The success and well-being of the people, not just in the United States and the world, also depends on the success and well-being of the economy. So I think we really need to start looking at this also through not just the public health lens, very important, but also through the economic lens. So I hope that we start doing that. But here's the thing. I think that Friday, the markets have been looking for a reason to sell off. I think Friday was probably an initial perhaps overreaction to the news. More news will come. Hopefully in a couple weeks from now, we get a better handle on what it is, and everything that I just put out there now on video saying it seems to be more transmissible, but it seems to be more mild in terms of its symptoms. Hopefully all that stuff will hold true, and we can, again, make decisions in our lives based around that. But for now, what does this mean? It means we're adding this to the list of things that we need to be looking at. Inflation, supply chain, the debt ceiling, we got some budget issues that are going to be dealt with here in December by Congress, as well as a long list of things. Let's just add now Omicron variants to this. And I'm going to add this, so I'm going to close on this, which hopefully will give you some positive thing to close on. I can see, my wife works for a large hospital here, which is very well known, and we can see the hospitalization data on a regular basis. And a couple of weeks ago, this was really, really interesting. About 10% of the beds were COVID, about 30% were West Nile. So at least there's something else to talk about besides COVID. So I think COVID is important. We have to, of course, listen to our public health experts in terms of how to tackle this thing and how to adapt to it. But I think it's also time to really start thinking about what any new restrictions, lockdown, travel bans, all this stuff might do to the economy. We got to switch the focus to the economy here, folks. I think as long as we begin to perhaps start to do that, Omicron doesn't really concern me from an economic perspective. But I think the markets are going to be looking very closely at what our elected and unelected leaders do in terms of continually stressing this economy moving forward in response to this. And so that's my closing thought. The economy, it's not a magic cornucopia that continue to spit out goods and services without disruption if you keep disrupting it. So hope I didn't press anyone's buttons with that, but again, one guy with a cell phone and an opinion. You agree with me, you disagree with me, let me know. You've been with me for 7 minutes. As always, thank you. And we're sure not running out of things to talk about each week. And I hope you're all doing well as you listen to these. Take care.